This has to be the strangest way to travel to another world. A high school student actually ended up there after being flushed down a toilet. On his very first day, he was crowned the Demon King and given the mission to eradicate humanity. It all began with a boy named Shibuya Yuri. On his way home, he witnessed some bullies extorting his classmate Murata. Hoping to do a good deed, he intervened only for Murata to flee, leaving Yuri to face the bullies alone. When Yuri couldn't pay up, they shoved his head into a girl's bathroom toilet, and he was swept away into another world. The locals were terrified at the sight of him, hurling stones to drive him away. To make matters worse, he couldn't understand their language, leaving him unable to explain himself. Just then, a man named Adalbert rode by on horseback. Using some kind of magic after a sudden burst of pain, Yuri could suddenly understand them. Moments later, a group of soldiers arrived, led by Konrad, an exceptional swordsman. After a brief clash, Adalbert retreated, and Konrad took Yuri with him. Back at their stronghold, a man named Gunther declared that Yuri was the new Demon King, chosen by Shinu. 18 years ago, Shin Makoku was in turmoil, so Yuri's soul was sent to Earth for his own safety. Yuri pretended to understand but assumed he'd need to complete some grand quest to return home. When he asked Gunther what he had to do, the answer was shocking. "Your Majesty must destroy all humans." Yuri was stunned. As a human himself, how could he possibly wipe out his own kind? This was an impossible demand. The next day, the group returned to the royal capital. Stuffle, the elder brother of the former Demon King, waited at the city gates with his men to welcome Yuri, a show of excessive courtesy. Upon arriving at the palace, Yuri decided to take a bath, only to accidentally stumble upon a stunning blonde beauty. Flustered, he bolted from the scene. At the evening banquet, Yuri met two other residents of the palace, Gwendol and Wolfram. They were Conrad's half-brothers, all born to the same mother but different fathers. As Mizoku nobles, they held high status like Conrad, whose human father denied him any noble standing. Wolfram, in particular, refused to acknowledge Conrad as his brother. Then, the former Demon King, Cecily, made her entrance. Despite being the mother of 3 grown men, her youthful appearance, thanks to the Mizoku's long lifespan, made her a breathtaking beauty. Unfortunately, she was more interested in romance than ruling, which was why she had abruptly abdicated, leading to Yuri's summoning. Wolfram was furious about the situation. To him, Yuri was just some ordinary human, utterly unworthy compared to Gwendol's noble lineage. But since Shinu had decreed Yuri's kingship, defiance meant divine retribution. Though forced to comply, Wolfram refused to serve Yuri and even insulted his mother. Enraged, Yuri slapped him across the face. Unbeknownst to Yuri, Mizoku tradition interpreted a strike to the left cheek as a marriage proposal. Just like that, the two were engaged. Wolfram, livid, swept the tableware to the floor in protest. When Yuri instinctively picked up a fallen knife, he unknowingly accepted a duel challenge. The odds were hopeless. Yuri, a carefree high school boy, stood no chance against Wolfram, a rigorously trained Mizoku elite. But Yuri, ever resourceful, swung his sword like a baseball bat and knocked Wolfram's weapon away. Humiliated, Wolfram retaliated with fire magic. Yuri dodged, but a nearby maid was scorched by the blast. Seeing this, something in Yuri snapped. His hair began growing wildly, and his pupils narrowed into beast-like slits. When Yuri woke up again, 3 days had already passed. Meanwhile, reports came in that a border village had been attacked. Conrad and Gwendol immediately led troops to the front lines. Upon hearing the news, Wolfram also gathered an elite unit and set off with Yuri for the border. However, they unexpectedly walked into a trap and were hit with an immobilization curse. It was then that Adalbert appeared. To capture Yuri, he had deliberately stirred conflict between 2 villages, inciting humans to slaughter each other because, to humans, those who served the Mizoku were no longer allies. There was no hesitation in their brutality. Realizing Adalbert's true target was him, Yuri ordered Wolfram to retreat while he stayed behind to hold them off. But he made it clear he would never side with Adalbert. Enraged, Adalbert decided to kill him on the spot until Conrad arrived just in time to save Yuri. Back at camp, Yuri visited the infirmary, intending to help treat the wounded villagers. But the villagers despised the Mizoku so deeply that even his goodwill was met with hostility. It was then that Yuri truly understood the vast divide between humans and Mizoku. Determined to bridge it, he resolved to fully embrace his role as Demon King, not to conquer, but to forge peace between the 2 races. Soon after, the coronation ceremony arrived. As part of the ritual, the new king was to submerge his hand in a sacred waterfall for purification. But the moment Yuri did so, a powerful force sucked him back into the modern world. Back home, Yuri reflected on his past. He had once given up his beloved baseball for reasons he now saw as trivial. But after his otherworldly journey, he realized the importance of holding on to what he loved, so he joined an amateur baseball team. Watching her son's renewed energy, Yuri's mother reminisced about the past. The truth was, their family wasn't ordinary either. His father was a Mazoku from this world, and after just 5 dates, he and Yuri's mother had married in a whirlwind romance. Even Yuri's soul had been personally brought to Earth and reincarnated by Conrad, who had also been the one to name him. After a day of sports, Yuri and Murata went to soak in the public bathhouse. Unexpectedly, a swirling vortex appeared in the center of the pool, sucking Yuri back into the other world. Before he could even react, his subordinates in the bathhouse rushed to embrace him. Fortunately, Conrad and Gunter arrived just in time to whisk him away. But Yuri's real headache was yet to come. During his absence, human nations had grown restless, secretly hiring mages in preparation for war against Shin Makoku. Yuri, of course, refused to accept this. He wanted to resolve things peacefully. As he argued with Gwendol, a woman named Anacina entered, and instantly, everyone's expressions changed. She was Gwendol's childhood friend, whose greatest hobby was inventing flashy but impractical magic tools, then testing them on Gwendol. Left alone in his office, Yuri agonized over the situation. He couldn't just stand by and let war break out. So he went to Gwendol, asking if there was any alternative. Gwendol admitted there was one, convinced the humans to abandon their plans. Then Gunter revealed a crucial piece of information. Long ago, the Mazoku possessed a legendary weapon that only the Demon King could wield. If Yuri retrieved it, no neighboring nation would dare attack. According to intelligence, the weapon was now on an island called Vandavia. Excited, Yuri immediately volunteered to go, though he soon learned it wasn't the holy sword he imagined, but a demonic sword. The next day, Yuri, disguised, set sail with Conrad. Wolfram stubbornly insisted on coming along but suffered terrible seasickness, vomiting miserably the entire trip. While on deck, Yuri and Conrad encountered a seemingly kind father and daughter, Heathcliff and his daughter, Beatrice. But then, Yuri heard shouting and rushed over to find a boy named Rick being bullied by the crew. After rescuing him, Yuri sighed. He had thought being forced into the role of Demon King was bad enough, but here was someone who seemed even worse off. Conrad, however, cautioned him. Judging someone's misfortune based on appearances alone is far too simplistic. That evening, a banquet was held on the ship. Yuri was appalled to see passengers casually dropping food scraps and trash on the floor. But before he could react, he found himself surrounded by a group of women his appearance, perfectly aligned with the other world's beauty standards. Heathcliff then approached, asking Yuri to dance with Beatrice. The problem? Yuri had never learned ballroom dancing. His movements were so awkward it was almost painful to watch. Mid-dance, one of his colored contact lenses fell out, forcing him to retreat to his room in embarrassment. But before he could recover, pirates attacked the ship. Conrad ordered Yuri and Wolfram to hide in a closet until the coast was clear, yet they were eventually discovered and dragged onto the deck. The pirate leader wasn't just after treasure. He planned to kidnap all the women and children while slaughtering every man aboard. When Yuri saw Beatrice being yanked by her hair, fury surged through him. In an instant, he entered Mao mode. The next second, food scraps and garbage on the floor began twisting together, forming a massive, grotesque skeleton. Luckily, a patrol ship arrived just in time. Relieved, Yuri collapsed into unconsciousness, only to wake up imprisoned in the patrol ship's brig. Fortunately, Conrad had secretly arranged backup. His subordinate Jozak helped them escape before things worsened. After days of travel, the group finally reached Vandavia Island. When the innkeeper heard they planned to visit the mountain spring, her face paled. She told them that 15 years ago, a blazing fireball had crashed into the spring, boiling the water for 3 days straight. Since then, anything that touched the spring went numb, some even died. Locals whispered that a monstrous entity lurked there. Hearing this, the group grew even more certain the demon sword was waiting in those cursed waters. The three of them soon reached the mountain summit. Upon entering the cave, they were hit by scorching heat. When water splashed onto Josak's hand, he cried out in pain, yet Yuri submerged his hand without any harm. Clearly, the spring, warped by the demon sword's power, permitted only the Demon King to approach. But when Yuri reached for the sword, it bit him. He immediately recoiled. He don't want some rebellious sword that bites its master. And it's ugly too. Josak scoffed. If you're scared, just step aside. Let us ordinary soldiers make the sacrifice instead. Conrad quickly intervened, calming the tension before the group retreated to the inn. Later, Wolfram theorized why the sword had attacked. It's hungry. According to ancient texts, the demon sword fed on human life force to sustain its power. After centuries without sustenance, its sudden aggression made sense. That night, Yuri, unable to sleep, went to find Conrad only to overhear him talking with Josak. Josak's earlier harshness had been a test. Had Yuri acted like past demon kings, callous toward his subordinates' lives, Josak would have been prepared to die for nothing. The realization struck Yuri hard. Countless lives depended on him now. He couldn't afford to fail them. So he returned alone and claimed the demon sword. Now, with the ultimate weapon in hand, a new problem arose. How to wield it. Feeding it human lives was unthinkable. But if not that, then what? The answer, it seemed, would define not just his reign but his very soul. At this moment, Josak picked up a recruitment flyer and flashed a knowing smile. Before Yuri could process what was happening, he found himself hired after a swift interview to work in a deathmatch arena. The opponents were all hardened criminals sentenced to death, granted a chance to live if they killed their challengers, ensuring they would fight mercilessly. An elderly woman, pitying Yuri, advised him to stall until the match ended if he refused to kill. To Yuri's shock, his first opponent was Rick, the boy bullied on the ship. It turned out Rick was part of the pirate crew, having posed as a trainee to gather intel. Despite this, Yuri refused to kill him, even urging him to escape together. Just as Rick hesitated, the arena's executioners shot him dead. Rules dictated that criminals must die by a challenger's hand, or be executed if they failed. When an elderly spectator suddenly died of a heart attack, the demon sword seized the opportunity to absorb his soul, unleashing its full power. The sky darkened as chaos erupted. Yuri, desperate to stop it, found himself helpless until a spell flashed through his mind, averting disaster. With his Mizoku identity exposed, Yuri fled with Conrad. By chance, Cecily passed through the country and picked them up. Reflecting on the incident, Yuri realized the demon sword, while deterring human nations, might provoke them into developing deadlier weapons. He removed its power source gem, entrusting it to Josak, then sealed the sword deep within the palace. Unexpectedly, the war crisis dissolved when Beatrice, the girl Yuri saved on the ship, was revealed to be the king's eldest granddaughter. The king sent envoys to negotiate, successfully preventing all-out war between humans and Mizoku. With matters in the other world temporarily settled, Yuri found himself back on Earth, unaware that in his absence, Stuffle had been scheming in the shadows. Since Yuri's ascension, Stuffle had been expelled from the palace, with governance entirely handed over to Gwendol. Resentful, Stuffle plotted to manipulate Yuri into becoming his puppet. Sometime later, Yuri was summoned back to the other world, this time appearing at Shinu Temple, a sacred site dedicated to the first demon king. By tradition, men were forbidden from entering, so the moment Yuri arrived, he was surrounded by female temple guards. Only after noticing his distinctive black hair and eyes did they realize he was their current demon king. Yuri then met the temple's high priestess, Ulrich, an 800-year-old shrine maiden. As it turned out, she had summoned him not out of urgency, but simply because she envied others who had met the demon king and wanted to see him for herself. She had asked Shinu's slumbering spirit within the temple to bring Yuri over. The frivolous reason left everyone speechless, though Ulrich did possess genuine power. Before they left, she warned Conrad that an ill omen loomed and urged him to protect Yuri at all costs. Upon returning to the royal castle, Yuri curiously asked why it was called Blood Pledge Castle. Gunter explained that Shinu had forged a pact with the earth elementals slumbering beneath it, recognizing only the Demon King as the castle's rightful ruler. Should anyone else seize control, the elementals would exact a bloody retribution. While reviewing documents in his office, Yuri found himself drawn to the map on the wall. Beyond the territories directly governed by the Demon King lay the domains of the 10 noble families. When the conversation turned to the region once ruled by Cecily, both Conrad and Gunter's expressions darkened. Though Stuffle, Cecily's elder brother by blood, currently administered the area, his unchecked ambitions marked him as a lurking traitor in their eyes. Meanwhile, Stuffle's subordinate Raven had already set his plans in motion. He first orchestrated disturbances within the royal capital to divert Conrad and part of the royal guard, then sent operatives to infiltrate the palace and abduct Yuri. Unexpectedly, Gwendol stood guard outside Yuri's chambers, thwarting the attempt entirely. Sensing the ruse, Conrad swiftly returned and joined Gwendol in tightening security around the Demon King. To everyone's surprise, Yuri remained unharmed, but the underground vault had been breached. The stolen item? The Dragonstone, the very gem that crowned the Demon King's regalia and symbolized his authority. Without recovering it, the Demon King's prestige would plummet. Yuri dispatched teams to investigate separately. Notably, the demon sword had hung opposite the Dragonstone during the theft. Hoping it might recall the culprit, Yuri brought it along only for the unruly blade to ignore the mission entirely, chasing after women instead. Suddenly, black-clad assailants ambushed them. Conrad and Wolfram arrived just in time to prevent Yuri's capture, leaving one attacker alive for interrogation. The prisoner confessed that Stuffle had ordered the ambush, seeking a private audience with Yuri away from his protectors. However, he denied any involvement in the Dragonstone's disappearance. Skeptical, Gwendol resolved to gather proof of Stuffle's theft. and use it to justify an offensive, but Yuri insisted on accompanying the mission, prompting Gwendol to remain behind and safeguard the capital. Conrad and Wolfram accompanied Yuri as they traveled to the town where the black-clad assailants had been spotted. Concerned for Yuri's safety, Conrad insisted he stay at the inn while he investigated alone. But Yuri, unwilling to burden him, persuaded Wolfram to join the search instead. Despite their efforts, they found no leads. While resting in the town square, Yuri noticed children playing pretend dressed as the Demon King. Puzzled by the locals' apparent fondness for the new ruler, he asked Wolfram about it. Wolfram explained that during Cecili's reign, Stuffle had monopolized power, dragging Shin Makoku into relentless wars with human nations. The conflicts were brutal, countless soldiers perished. Conrad himself narrowly escaped death, and they lost someone precious, Julia. That was why the people now welcomed a wiser Demon King. But peace remained fragile, and Yuri's duties were far from over. When Conrad returned to the inn and found them missing, he rushed out only to witness black-clad figures abducting Yuri. He and Wolfram gave chase, but the enemies had planned ahead, summoning demons to aid their escape. Helpless, Conrad could only watch as Yuri was taken away. Meanwhile, Yuri awoke in an unfamiliar room. Soon, Stuffle entered with his subordinate Raven, denying any kidnapping and instead accusing Gwendol and the others of exploiting the Demon King's name to control Shin Makoku. Yuri, though lacking combat skills, was no fool. He saw through the lies. When persuasion failed, Stuffle resorted to confining him. Luckily, Josak, who had infiltrated the estate, arrived to rescue Yuri. As they sneaked through the halls, they overheard news of Gwendol mobilizing troops. War seemed inevitable. But Yuri, a staunch pacifist, refused to let his people tear each other apart. After escaping, he reunited with Wolfram and Conrad, rushing to the front lines to stop the conflict before it spiraled out of control. The two armies stood facing each other across the canyon, poised for battle. Gwendol had already branded Stuffle a traitor and was determined to execute him on the spot. But just before the fighting could begin, Yuri arrived on the battlefield. He urged both sides to calm down and talk things out. There was no need for bloodshed. Yet neither Gwendol nor Gunter was willing to back down. With a wave of their hands, they ordered their troops to charge. Yuri! Yuri, however, intervened with overwhelming force, forcibly suppressing the clash before it could escalate. As for Stuffle, while his life was spared, his punishment was exile. Confined to his own territory, he would reflect on his actions under strict surveillance. With the civil conflict temporarily resolved, the mystery of the missing Dragonstone remained. It seemed Stuffle truly hadn't stolen it after all. Then, a soldier discovered a scroll in the treasury signed IOU from Cecily. Turns out, she had taken the gem to craft into a necklace, all for the sake of appearances. By the time Yuri crossed back into this world again, months had passed. According to Gunter, the southern nation of Konanshia had publicly announced the capture of the Demon King. Fearing it might be Yuri, Shin Makoku summoned him to confirm. But with Yuri safe and sound, it meant the prisoner was an imposter. The real puzzle? The fake Demon King wielded Metekia power only the true king could command. After some deliberation, Yuri decided to rescue the captive himself. Alongside Conrad and the others, he set out for Konanshia. Coincidentally, Gwendol was already in the area with the Meteki research team. The group rendezvoused at the camp before heading out together, ready to uncover the truth behind the mysterious imposter. According to Conrad, 20 years ago, Shin Makoku dispatched an exploration team, which included Gwendol's cousin, Hube. However, Hube mysteriously disappeared one day. Yuri assumed Gwendol had traveled all this way to find his long-lost brother, moved by what he thought was a touching familial bond. But Conrad and Wolfram exchanged uneasy glances at his remark. During the journey, the group accidentally triggered a sandbear's trap, and Wolfram was swallowed by a vortex. Conrad immediately entrusted Yuri to Gwendol's care before diving in after Wolfram. Left with no choice, Yuri continued on with Gwendol. When they stopped in a town for supplies, the atmosphere felt ominous. Even the soldiers carried an air of lawlessness. Gwendol, wary of danger, ordered Yuri to wait outside. Yet trouble still found them. The soldiers mistook them for wanted fugitives and took Yuri hostage, demanding they submit to shackles. Unwilling to comply, Yuri struck a soldier's groin, creating an opening for their escape. Upon reaching Konanshia, Gwendol rushed Yuri to a temple to remove the enchanted shackles, only to stumble into a wedding ceremony. The officiant mistakenly assumed they were a couple. Not wanting to disrupt the event, Yuri offered his blessings to the bride and groom. But the bride, Nicola, confessed she didn't love her groom at all. Inspired by Yuri's words, she fled the wedding, dragging Yuri and Gwendol with her. Nicola revealed she had been forcibly separated from her true love, Gwendol's missing cousin, who beyond was marrying another man while carrying Hoop's child. As soldiers closed in, a child named Jilta guided them to a hidden storeroom. Gwendol immediately recognized the boy as a half-human, half Mazoku hybrid. In this kingdom, such unions were criminal. Jilta's Mazoku father had been executed, and his human mother exiled to the quarries. As the mood grew somber, Yuri quickly changed the subject, asking Jilta for water. To his shock, he learned that Konanshia's water sources had long dried up, leaving its people surviving on meager rations. Nicola then revealed more of her past after falling in love with Hube. She had heard rumors that Mateki could summon rain. Desperate, the two stole the artifact from a ruin. But when village elders discovered the theft, Hube was captured. To spare his life, Nicola agreed to marry the elder's son. Before their separation, Hube entrusted Mateki to her. Yuri tried blowing into the flute, but nothing happened. Before they could react, soldiers stormed in. Gwendol refused to let a pregnant woman risk capture, ordering Jilta to take Nicola to safety while he and Yuri held off the guards. Despite Gwendol's skill, they were overwhelmed and arrested. In Konanshia, human Mazoku relationships were a capital offense. The two were dragged to court a building lined with magic-suppressing gemstones that left Gwendol visibly weakened. The judge offered Yuri a deal: renounce his relationship with Gwendol, and he'd be spared. A blade was placed before him. But Yuri can't possibly kill Gwendol. Sentenced on the spot, Gwendol was thrown into the dungeons. Yuri? He was exiled to the quarries where the kingdom's undesirables toiled until death. Meanwhile, Conrad and Wolfram arrived in Konanshia only to find Yuri and Gwendol missing from the inn. Realizing something was wrong, they set out to search and soon encountered Nicola, who was hiding from soldiers. From her, they learned of the arrests. Acting swiftly, they infiltrated the dungeons and freed Gwendol. Meanwhile, in the quarries, Yuri met a woman named Norika. She explained that all the prisoners there were women punished for loving Mazoku. Yuri was outraged love shouldn't be bound by race. But his fury erupted when he saw guards snatch an infant from a prisoner, intending to bury it alive. Power surged uncontrollably as Yuri entered Mao mode. By the time Conrad's group arrived, Yuri was slaughtering indiscriminately. Fearful he'd lose himself completely, Gwendol risked his life to plead for mercy to spare even their enemies. When Yuri finally awoke, the officials and soldiers had fled. Most prisoners had escaped too, except those connected to Mazokuthe begged for passage to Shinmakoku. Norika, desperate to reclaim her son's remains, dug up his grave only to find it empty. Then her father arrived with Jilta. A decade ago, Hube had saved the child and secretly delivered him to his grandfather. Mother and son reunited at last. Amid the chaos, Yuri stumbled upon a missing piece of Mateki buried in the grave. As they fled, pursuers closed in, and a sand bear blocked their path. With no options left, Yuri raised Mateki to his lips. If its water-controlling power could be harnessed, they might just survive. The shrill, off-key notes of the flute were unbearable, but they worked. In an instant, storm clouds gathered over Konanshia, unleashing a downpour on the parched kingdom for the first time in 2 years. Just then, Ryan, a member of the exploration team, appeared and reassured the group that the sand bear was harmless. It was his wife. With Ryan's help, they dug an underground tunnel back to Shinmakoku, narrowly escaping their pursuers. Upon their return, Yuri attempted to go back to Earth through the bath portal, but the vortex refused to appear. Seeking help from Ulrike, he learned that Shinu's spirit was in deep slumber, cutting off his way home. Trapped in the other world, Yuri found himself subjected to Gunter's brutal training regimen, cramming history, etiquette, and politics until his brain nearly melted. Desperate for an escape, Yuri seized the chance when reports surfaced of stolen magic stones meant for Blood Pledge Castle. Disguising himself, he ventured into the outer city and traced the stones to a struggling family, the Rosettas. They relied on the stone's restorative powers to make ends meet, and confiscating it would doom them. After discussing with Conrad, Yuri allowed them to keep it temporarily, giving them time to stabilize their livelihood. But a gang of thieves had also been eyeing the stone. That night, they kidnapped Rosetta's younger brother, demanding the artifact as ransom. Rosetta had no choice but to comply, but Conrad, anticipating treachery, had Josek tail the thieves. Once their hideout was exposed, Conrad's troops moved in. A fierce battle erupted. The gang's leader, cornered, took Rosetta hostage only for Yuri's rage to trigger Mao mode. Lightning split the sky, striking the thieves where they stood. Afterward, Yuri let the Rosettas keep the stone. As Conrad revealed, it wasn't the stolen one after all. Better it aid those in need than gather dust in a vault. Meanwhile, In an attempt to curry favor with Yuri, Stuffle invited him to attend a ceremony commemorating the castle's renovations. However, the event took an unexpected turn when Cecily suddenly returned home and announced her plans to remarry none other than Raven, Stuffle's own subordinate. The news left Stuffle reeling. His sister, the former Demon King, marrying his right-hand man? That would effectively place Raven above him in status. Coincidentally, Conrad and his brothers were equally opposed to their mother's remarriage. Though for different reasons, both factions reached the same conclusion. The wedding had to be stopped. During the rehearsal, Ryan brought his sandbear to performantly for the creature to dig a massive pit on stage, sending Yuri and Cecily tumbling in. Conrad and Raven immediately leaped down to rescue them. The pit led to the castle's underground tunnels, scattering the group. But Cecily knew these passages while she and Raven had played hide-and-seek here as children. They had grown up together, though their paths diverged when she became Demon King, and he remained at Stuffle's side, aiding his ambitions. Cecily had returned this time to warn Raven against repeating past mistakes, urging him to stay true to himself. Raven, understanding her intent, reaffirmed his loyalty to their childhood promises. What he didn't confess, though, was that his feelings for her had never faded then or now. After returning from Stuffle's territory, Yuri found himself troubled once again by the issue of living with Wolfram. Wolfram had no choice. Every other room in the palace was occupied, leaving only the guest quarters available. But rumors claimed the building was haunted by a man-eating monster, so no one dared go near it. Yuri, however, couldn't care less. If there was a monster, he'd just capture it. One way or another, Wolfram was moving out. But the guest house, long neglected, had other plans. The moment they stepped inside, the floor gave way, sending them crashing into the basement. Instantly, giant silkworm-like creatures surrounded them, spinning thick threads that cocooned them both, suspending them from the rafters. Wolfram had no idea what these creatures were, but as the Demon King's fiancé and subordinate, his duty was to protect Yuri. He prepared to slaughter the cocoons before they could hatch, but Yuri stopped him. "They have the right to be born," Yuri insisted. "If we have to fight, we'll do it after they hatch." Furious but helpless, Wolfram could only watch as the ceiling above them groaned ominously, threatening to collapse. Then just in time, the cocoons glowed brilliantly, and the creatures inside burst free. To Wolfram's shock, they weren't monsters at all, but bear bees, a critically endangered species. Using their strength, they propped up the crumbling ceiling long enough for Conrad to arrive and rescue them. As it turned out, the rumors had been deliberately spread to protect the bear bees from poachers. Now that they had safely hatched, Yuri was thrilled. Wolfram could finally move out. But Conrad delivered one final twist. The guest house belongs to the bear bees now. They've imprinted on you two as their parents. Next breeding season, they'll return here. Yuri's hope for a private room vanished along with his patience. The next day, soldiers reported a child claiming to be Yuri's illegitimate offspring arrived with a crest symbolizing the Demon King's lineage. The room erupted in chaos at this announcement. Wolfram burned with rage, accusing Yuri of philandering despite having a fiancé. Nevertheless, Yuri insisted on meeting the claimant. To everyone's shock, the visitor turned out to be an assassin. Conrad swiftly knocked the assailant unconscious, though Yuri unfortunately sprained his ankle during the commotion, requiring crutches for the next 2 weeks. Regarding the assassin's punishment, both Gwendol and Wolfram advocated execution, but Yuri argued the child might have been manipulated by villains and persuaded everyone to detain the youth temporarily. To expedite Yuri's recovery, Conrad arranged a trip to a hot spring town. Though located in human territory, the neutral zone held no hostility toward Mizoku, allowing the Demon King to relax safely. Yuri brought the captive assassin along, intending to build rapport and extract information about the mastermind. Through communication, they only learned the assassin's name was Greta. Yuri remained patient, deciding to savor the trip first. Upon disembarking at the hot spring town, the group immediately witnessed casino owner Byron quarreling over cheating allegations. The sight of Byron's bodyguard caused Greta to pale, and she later attempted to sneak out at night to find him. Yuri caught her but didn't scold her. Concerned for her safety, he accompanied her back to the casino. As they approached, they saw nightclub hostesses being harassed by thugs. Yuri intervened without hesitation, only to have the rescued hostess flee immediately afterward. The entire scenario felt unsettlingly familiar. Fleeing from the thugs' pursuit, the two dashed straight into narrow alleyways. Just as they were about to be caught, a hand suddenly yanked them into a hidden corner. It turned out to be the nightclub hostess who had escaped earlier. To express gratitude for Yuri's earlier intervention, she brought them to a ramen stall for a meal and introduced herself as Ezra. Greta gasped in shock upon hearing the name. It was identical to her mother's. Ezra seemed to recall something, but before she could confirm further details, the thugs tracked them down. The trio was subsequently dragged to a basement and imprisoned, with Ezra's friend Nina getting implicated as well. When Nina heard Yuri was Mazoku, her face changed dramatically, showing evident disgust at being touched by Mazoku. Unfazed, Yuri calmly suggested using Nina's loud complaints to lure over the guards. Their ambush succeeded, allowing Yuri and Greta to escape. Meanwhile, after discovering Yuri's disappearance, Conrad immediately took Wolfram to search the city. They unexpectedly encountered Hiscliff en route, and with his assistance, rushed to the villa to rescue Yuri and Greta. According to Hiscliff, Biron not only cheated in casino operations, but also conducted unethical business dealings. As the administrator of southern regions, Hiscliff couldn't tolerate Biron's misconduct. Since Yuri also wanted to confront Biron, they proceeded to his office together. They found Biron's bodyguard already present, who attacked Yuri without warning. When Conrad stepped forward and ripped off the assailant's mask, his suspicions were confirmed. The mysterious bodyguard was Hube. Though Yuri intended to take Hube back and refused to abandon Ezra and Nina, Biron demanded a wager. He would release them only if Yuri won the bet. The stakes were clear. Should Yuri lose, he himself would become Biron's property. Afterward, Yuri brought Hube back to the inn. Wolfram couldn't understand why Hube attacked Yuri, but Greta explained that Hube sought death. Tormented by guilt after fleeing his homeland due to past mistakes, Hube had found fleeting solace in a cherished relationship, only to have it torn apart, cementing his belief that he deserved no happiness. Greta, sensing his anguish, helped him escape the dungeon and reach Shinmakoku's border. However, Hube, ashamed to return home, gave Greta his identity emblem and left to find a place to die. Greta's earlier assassination attempt on the Demon King stemmed from her adoptive father's constant vilification of Mizoku. She had hoped killing Yuri would please him. Now, she recognized Yuri's goodness. The next day, the Monster Racing Championship commenced. Biron entered a Hell Koala creature with dual personalities, angelic, while clinging to trees and demonic otherwise. Yuri fielded Ryan and Sandbear. Initially, Ryan surged ahead, but the koala's frenzied, tree-deprived state threatened to overtake and devour him. Conrad, however, prepared a countermeasure. As the koala passed trees lining the track, it instinctively latched onto one, forgetting the race. Yuri's team won, but Biron reneged, ordering his men to burn the casino and destroy incriminating evidence. Arriving to find the casino engulfed in flames, Yuri rushed inside upon hearing Ezra and Nina were trapped. He abruptly shifted into Mao mode, summoning a water dragon to extinguish the blaze. Contrary to past episodes where magic use left him comatose, Yuri remained conscious this time. Meanwhile, Nina's life hung by a thread. Only Yuri's magic could save her, but his magical energy was depleted from the earlier spell. Using magic again would overexert him, so Conrad and Wolfram objected. As tensions escalated, Anacina suddenly stepped forward to support Yuri, declaring, "Overprotecting him won't help him grow." Hearing this, Conrad and Wolfram reluctantly relented. After resolving the crisis, the group returned to Shinmakoku. When Yuri saw Gwendol approaching with guards, he assumed they came to welcome him. Instead, Gwendol immediately pressed his sword to Hube's neck. Not only Gwendol, but others in Blood Pledge Castle also hesitated upon Hube's return. However, since saving Hube was Yuri's order, they complied. After medic Gisela treated Hube's wounds, Yuri brought Greta to visit him and asked why everyone despised Hube. Gisela hesitated before revealing the past. 20 years ago during a great war, Hube accused humans and half-bloods in Shinmakoku of treason. To prove their loyalty, Conrad and others volunteered for the front line without weapons or armor, surviving solely through grit. Only Conrad and Josak lived. Though the battle saved Shinmakoku, Hube's unauthorized actions during the war left a border city poorly defended. Enemy forces ambushed it, and Julia, a revered noble renowned for her immense innate magic, was stationed there with her unit. The surge of casualties forced Julia to overexert her magic to heal the wounded, ultimately costing her life. Unable to forgive Hube for this sin, the people exiled him under the guise of searching for Mateki. After learning about the past events, Yuri felt deeply conflicted. He believed his act of saving Hube had been reckless and disregarded others' feelings. Yet he also reasoned that Hube, who loved Nicola and treated Greta kindly, could not be entirely wicked. While Yuri was confiding his distress to Conrad, an attack suddenly struck. Looking up, they saw it was Hube. At that moment, Hube finally realized he had assaulted the Demon King and committed another grave mistake. Accepting his fate, he took Gwendol's punch without resistance. Nicola, unable to watch her lover be killed, quickly fled with him. Greta blocked Gwendol's path, pleading for everyone to forgive Hube as they had forgiven her, explaining that he had repented and suffered for years over his past actions. Gwendol remained silent but felt a flicker of doubt within. The group chased the pair to the terrace. Hube apologized to Gwendol, stating that returning to his homeland had never been his intention. He had long prepared to die abroad. Meeting Conrad at the hot springs town made him believe he could finally atone through death. Gwendol coldly ordered him to take up a sword for a duel. During their confrontation, Hube fell from the terrace under Gwendol's relentless pressure but was caught by demons moments before impact. Yuri declared that since Hube had retrieved Mateki to redeem himself, no further punishment would be pursued. Gwendol added nothing except a remark that Hube should swear loyalty to Yuri out of gratitude. After the conflict, Nicola suddenly went into labor. The panicked men, inexperienced in childbirth, froze until Gisela arrived with maids and escorted Nicola to the delivery room. Hours later, the baby was born, reuniting the family of 3. Though Greta did not voice it aloud, she secretly envied their family life. Noticing this, Yuri resolved to formally adopt her as his daughter. However, Gunter strongly objected, citing Greta's status as a royal descendant of a fallen nation as unsuitable for becoming the Demon King's adopted child. Yuri remained unwavering. Konrad supported him, arguing that having a daughter would motivate Yuri in handling state affairs. With this, Gunter was ultimately persuaded. After resolving a burden, Yuri felt utterly relaxed and went to bathe in the hot springs. Unexpectedly, the transportation portal suddenly functioned properly, sending him directly back to Earth. During Yuri's absence, Gunter nearly went mad with longing, a testament to his status as the Demon King's obsessive admirer. Wolfram transitioned into childcare, as Greta, now the Demon King's adopted daughter, was technically also his child. Konrad observed the peaceful scene, his heart softening. This life mirrored the future his beloved Julia had envisioned. After Julia sacrificed herself on the battlefield, her fiancé Adalbert grew to hate Hube, the root cause, and demanded his execution to honor her. However, Gwendol and Cecilie instead dispatched Hube to retrieve Mateki. Adalbert, deeply devoted to Julia, viewed Mazoku's leniency toward Hube as unjust favoritism. Resentful, he left Shin Makoku. Meanwhile, Konrad, who had narrowly survived the battlefield, sank into grief over Julia's death until Ulrich approached him. Before her death, Julia had been summoned by Shinu, who revealed her impending demise and that her soul would become the next Demon King. Julia accepted this fate, but requested Konrad guide her soul to reincarnation. Konrad later traveled alone to Earth. The Mazoku assigned to assist him was Jose, who shared an identical mission. Notably, the soul in Jose's care belonged to the great Sagati advisor to the first Demon King, who held status equal to royalty in Shinmakoku. Julia's soul was eventually placed with the Shibuya family. Konrad remained on Earth until Yuri's birth, his sorrow over losing loved ones gradually healing. Now, he simply wished for Julia's new life to be filled with happiness. After the memories concluded, Hube's family prepared to leave. Before departing, Hube revealed a crucial detail. During his imprisonment in the palace dungeon, he had seen a box. His left eye resonated with it, ultimately transforming into its current state. The group paled at this revelation. Meanwhile, Yuri and Murata took part-time jobs at the seaside. When a girl's bikini was washed away by waves, Yuri dived in to retrieve it, only to be swept into a whirlpool transporting him to another world. Though accustomed to such incidents, he soon learned from Gunter and Konrad that this time, the teleportation wasn't Ulrich's doing but orchestrated by unknown forces. With human nations stirring unrest and assassins infiltrating Shin Makoku, Yuri's safety couldn't be guaranteed. Gunter had arranged a ritual to return him to Earth. As the 4 prepared to leave, Gunter suddenly collapsed, struck by an arrow. The remaining 3 fled to a nearby church, but assassins closed in. Konrad hastily activated the Earthbound portal, urging Yuri to escape first. During the attacker's onslaught, Konrad's left arm was severed. The next instant, Yuri was caught in an explosion and flung into the portal. He awoke on an unfamiliar island with Murata beside him. This was not Earth but Caloria, a vassal state of Big Shimmeron. Through conversations with elderly locals, they learned Big Shimmeron was mobilizing for war. As a subordinate nation, Caloria had conscripted its youth, leaving only the aged behind. Though Murata inexplicably understood the foreign language, he ignored warnings about the war, focusing solely on finding the territory's ruler to secure their return home. The 2 then arrived at the mansion atop the mountain. By chance, the pendant on Yuri's neck bore the Wincott family crest. Guards immediately escorted them inside upon seeing it. Soon, the Lord Norman entered the parlor, oddly wearing a mask and communicating solely through his steward. According to the steward, millennia ago, the Wincott family, Julia's birth family, had ruled this land. They allied with 9 other great races to defeat Sushu, who sought to conquer the world. However, the Wincott clan gradually began oppressing the populace. The people rebelled against their tyrannical rule, eventually overthrowing them to establish Caloria. The region later became an autonomous territory of Small Shimmeron. Suddenly, 2 intruders burst into the parlor, Maxine, an envoy from Small Shimmeron, and Adalbert. They demanded answers about rumors of Norman organizing anti-war efforts. When Maxine ripped off Norman's mask, she exposed Flynn Norman's wife masquerading as her deceased husband since his fatal carriage accident 3 years ago to protect their territory and lineage. Maxine disregarded Flynn's identity, demanding to know if she had sold the Wincot's poison hidden here to others. The toxin coating the arrow that struck Gunter forces victims to obey Wincot family members even after death. However, Gunter had entered a suspended death state after poisoning. To preserve his soul, Anacina transferred it into a doll. Flynn remained composed during Maxine's interrogation, retorting indifferently even when accused. Enraged, Maxine wrapped silk threads around Flynn's neck. As tensions escalated, big Chimeran soldiers arrived. Maxine and Adalbert fled through a window to avoid detection. Moments later, big Chimeran troops stormed the parlor with firearms. Yuri instantly connected them to the assassins who had attacked Conrart. After the incident, Yuri fell unconscious again. Murata feared Flynn might seize this opportunity to act against him, but she stated she had no intention to harm him. She still needed Yuri. Meanwhile, when Wolfram forcibly entered the Shinu temple, he saw Yuri in Chimeran through the divination crystal sphere. He immediately sought Gwendol to join the search team heading there. Gwendol refused, fearing Wolfram might cause complications. Undeterred, Wolfram seized an opportunity when Gisela needed to travel nearby and joined her group. The four later boarded a ship bound for Big Chimeran. Mid-journey, they discovered the soldier Keenan had vanished. The group belatedly recalled Keenan had once served under Adalbert before joining the military. Concurrently, Yuri and Murata accompanied Flynn on a vessel to Big Chimeran. Flynn explained, Chimeran transported defeated soldiers as prisoners via commandeered civilian ships due to insufficient official transports. Caloria, her territory, had become a vassal state after invasion. With small Chimeran now preparing war against Shin Makoku, Caloria's youth had been forcibly conscripted. Suddenly, warships emerged and bombarded their vessel, forcing everyone to abandon ship. Josak, who had been covertly protecting Yuri, swiftly escorted them ashore. After securing temporary shelter, he left to forage for supplies. Resuming their conversation, Flynn revealed her late husband had persistently negotiated with small Chimeran for prisoner repatriation until his death. When negotiations failed, she sold Wincot's poison to Big Chimeran to pressure small Chimeran, vowing to fulfill her husband's mission by any means. Murata questioned why Big Chimeran desired the poison. Flynn hinted it related to controlling a key for a mysterious box. At that moment, Josak returned under armed guard. Soldiers apprehended Yuri, Murata, and Flynn, sealing their capture. Meanwhile, with Anacina's assistance, Gunter was successfully cured of the poison. The group soon received a carrier pigeon message confirming Yuri's journey to Big Chimeran. As Gwendol began organizing next steps, a soldier abruptly reported that Conrart's arm had gone missing. Yuri and the three others were imprisoned in a warehouse. When discussing the crates they had seen earlier, Josak grew solemn. In ancient times, Sushu entities of immense power attempted to destroy the world but were defeated and sealed into 4 containers by the Mazoku ancestors, later known as the Forbidden Boxes. Opening them would unleash destructive energies. The keys to these boxes were not objects but parts of living beings. Small Chimeran had coincidentally discovered a key to one box. Unbeknownst to Flynn and Yuri, Big Chimeran also possessed a forbidden box. Flynn had initially cooperated with Big Chimeran, believing them peace-seeking, but now doubted this. When faced with easily attainable power, would anyone truly remain indifferent? Maxine planned to test the box's power using Yuri. Anticipating this, Murata and Josak devised an escape plan, successfully breaking through guards to rescue Yuri. However, they were swiftly discovered. Cornered by Adalbert and Keenan, Yuri, unwilling to see more sacrifices made for him, abandoned the escape and returned with Adalbert. At the pit's base, a crowd had gathered. Maxine declared that the box held unprecedented power to eradicate the evil Mazoku. Yuri clenched his fists below, anger rising as he observed the nodding humans. Murata shared his anguish, but noted prejudice and betrayal were inevitable. He asked if Yuri was truly prepared to be a king. Yuri affirmed he would endure the pain and never halt his progress, vowing to reconcile humans and Mazoku. Soon, Maxine produced the key. To Yuri's shock, it turned out to be Conrart's severed arm. Murata urged Maxine to reconsider, explaining that the box's true key should be a specific clan member's left eye. Inserting the wrong key would trigger the box's rampage, dooming everyone present. Ignoring the warning, Maxine thrust the arm into the box. The skies darkened, the ground quaked, and countless prisoners plummeted into the abyss. Maxine and his superior attempted to flee but were caught in the chaos. At the critical moment, Yuri entered Mao mode. After rescuing the prisoners, he strained his remaining magic to counter the box's malevolent energy. Witnessing Yuri's agony yet determination, Murata stopped concealing his abilities and channeled his magical energy to Yuri. Through their combined efforts, Conrart's severed arm was extracted, and the box stabilized. As Yuri teetered on the edge of a fissure, Wolfram finally arrived. Before the group could decide how to handle the box, Maxine unexpectedly reappeared, still alive. However, Yuri's side now held overwhelming numbers, leaving Maxine utterly outmatched. Josak and Wolfram gripped their swords, ready to strike, but Yuri refused to kill him. Instead, he ordered Maxine to be bound with a ribbon and left as a gift for small Shimaron. The group then sailed back to Kaloria. Yuri confronted Murata, demanding his true identity. Murata finally confessed to being the reincarnation of the great sage. Unlike Yuri, he retained memories of all his past lives. However, whenever he revealed this to others, they dismissed him as delusional. Over time, he stopped sharing his secret. Yuri, understanding his reasons, forgave him immediately. That evening they arrived in Kaloria, now partially reduced to ruins by the box's residual effects. Yuri organized rescue efforts for the residents. Wolfram grumbled that Mizoku shouldn't aid humans to this extent, yet obeyed orders faster than anyone. Gwendol soon arrived with naval forces. Though reluctant, he cooperated after seeing Yuri and Murata's resolve. However, lingering distrust between humans and Mizoku hindered their efforts. Flynn intervened to advocate for Yuri, and a young girl's warm gesture gradually softened the residents' resistance. As rescue operations progressed, Yuri contemplated the box's disposal. Without its key, it seemed harmless. He and Murata dug a pit on a mountainside to bury it, only to be caught by Gwendol, who insisted on transporting both box and key to their homeland for safekeeping. Wolfram defended Yuri's decision, forcing Gwendol to concede. Unbeknownst to Yuri, Gwendol's insistence stemmed from refusing to let his brother's body part remain lost. Finally, the group held a ceremony aboard their ship, sinking Conrad's arm into the ocean's depths. Meanwhile, Big Shimaran dispatched envoys to inform Kaloria's residents of a martial arts tournament to be held during the Memorial Festival. All participants would be elites from Big Shimaran and its vassal states. The victorious lord could demand any reward from Big Shimaron's emperor. However, Big Shimaran resorted to underhanded tactics and rigged matches, ensuring their own victory every time. The so-called reward remained an empty promise, never fulfilled. Now, Kaloria lacked the resources to assemble a team. Refusal to participate would compel compensation to Big Shimaran. Thus, Yuri decided to represent Kaloria, aiming to claim the Forbidden Box as the prize if victorious. The group set sail, with Josak joining both as a guard and participant. Though born in Big Shimaran, Josak despised the nation. His father, a Mizoku, led to Josak and his mother's exile to a desolate mountain village. After his mother's death, Conrad's father fleeing Big Shimaran rescued the villagers and brought them to Shin Makoku, offering refuge. Upon arriving in Big Shimaran, the preliminary round began immediately. To qualify for battles against Big Shimaran's fighters, they needed to win the ski bob race. Without delay, Josak procured a sled pulled by goats. Murata, meanwhile, refused to share Yuri's naivety that victory alone would secure the box. He resolved to secretly switch the real Forbidden Box with a decoy. Meanwhile, during the competition, Yuri encountered Maxine, who also aimed to seize the box at any cost. Knowing goats despised black bean buns, Maxine prepared one to disrupt the sled-pulling goats mid-race. Unexpectedly, a goat ate the bun, its eyes turning red as it charged toward the Great Rift. At the critical moment, Yuri recalled his mother's advice on bonding with animals. Climbing onto the goat's back, he calmed it. The goat then leaped across the rift, while Maxine plummeted into the abyss, and other competitors were stranded. Yuri thus claimed the preliminary victory. To his surprise, Adalbert represented Big Shimaran in the finals. The tournament was divided into 3 rounds, each requiring a duel between 3 representatives. Yuri, a novice, would surely lose if he fought, damaging national prestige. Wolfram and Josak resolved to win the first 2 rounds to eliminate his need to participate. The Emperor declared the tournament open. Wolfram faced a dual sword wielder first. Though Yuri feared Wolfram's defeat, Murata remained unfazed, confident in the Mizoku elite's superiority. True to his word, Wolfram disarmed his opponent and secured victory. The next match grew tense as Adalbert, evenly matched with Josak, took the field. Suddenly, Maxine reappeared, holding Flynn hostage to force Yuri's side to forfeit. Reluctantly, Yuri ordered Murata to signal Josak to throw the match. Adalbert, unaware of the scheme, furiously demanded a rematch after noticing Josak's intentional weakness, but no one acknowledged him. Witnessing Josak's defeat, Maxine felt immense satisfaction. The next instant, Cecilie abruptly appeared, harshly reprimanded Maxine, and ordered her attendants to carry him away. Coincidentally, Cecilie's new lover, Fanbarl, was a wealthy merchant from Big Shimaron, who frequently delivered antiques to the Emperor's treasury. She thus tasked him with leading a team to swap the Forbidden Box. Meanwhile, the Emperor sent a 3rd combatant to the arena. To everyone's shock, it was Conrart. Yuri was overjoyed to see him alive but could not understand why he sided with Big Shimaron, leaving Yuri feeling betrayed. Conrart urged Yuri to forfeit, but Yuri refused outright, drawing his sword to clash with Conrart. Every strike was effortlessly blocked, exhausting Yuri without inflicting a single wound. Adalbert, ignoring the tournament rules, stormed onto the field. He first restrained Conrart, then lunged at Yuri with his sword. Cornered, Conrart revealed to Adalbert that Yuri's soul was Julia. Stunned, Adalbert halted his attack. Simultaneously, Josak and others rushed into the arena to shield Yuri. Murata declared that Big Shimaron's 2-against-1 tactic violated the rules. Yet the Emperor disregarded fairness, unilaterally declaring Big Shimaron the victor and ordering soldiers to execute the disruptors. Yuri's group was swiftly surrounded. Enraged, Yuri's magic spiraled out of control again, unleashing a tempest that engulfed the arena proof of his title as the Demon King, with the greatest potential in history. Conrart, witnessing Yuri's instability, desperately called his name to calm him. Yuri gradually ceased his rampage and collapsed unconscious. Josak, abandoning any confrontation with Conrart, immediately hoisted Yuri and fled with the group. At this moment, Cecily had already arranged a carriage for them to take the swapped forbidden box to the port and escape by ship. However, to evade pursuers, the group abandoned the carriage halfway, erased their footprints in the snow, and detoured. Upon entering a canyon, Big Shimaron's soldiers blocked their path. Unexpectedly, Adalbert appeared and intercepted the pursuers. Despite his lingering hatred for Mizoku, he could not ignore Julia's reincarnation. The group continued forward, only for Conrart to suddenly stand in their way. He warned them of Big Shimaron's ambush ahead and advised Yuri to take a detour. Conrart then declared he now served a new master and that their next meeting would be as enemies. These resolute words cut into Yuri's heart like a blade, leaving him stunned and speechless. Days later, the group returned to Caloria by ship. Reconstruction efforts, aided by Mizoku, progressed smoothly. However, Flynn worried Big Shimaron might target Caloria. Murata reassured her that under the pretense of friendship with Shin Makoku, Big Shimaron would never dare attack. The next day, as Yuri prepared to board a ship back to Shin Makoku, Conrart's ruthless words haunted him. He insisted on staying to confront Conrart for answers. Wolfram opposed the risk, and during their struggle, Yuri and Murata fell into the water, triggering their return to Earth. Afterward, Yuri sank into despair, unable to cross back despite repeated attempts. He confided in Murata, adamant that Conrart's betrayal must conceal hidden struggles. Murata agreed, and led Yuri deep into the forest, where they used an artificial lake to reopen the portal to the other world. Yuri was shocked at the difficulty of crossing. Murata alone lacked the power, but with Ulrich's help, the teleportation channel opened. At this moment, Gwendol knelt on one knee before Yuri to plead guilt, willing to accept any punishment in Conrart's place. However, Yuri had no intention of blaming anyone, as he believed there were hidden circumstances behind Conrart's betrayal. Ulrich then led them to the depths of the temple, where the 2 recovered forbidden boxes would henceforth be guarded. When Yuri asked, "What exactly are the Sushu?" Murata explained that the Sushu were entities of immense power. 1,000 years ago, when they attempted to destroy the world, Shinu united numerous capable individuals to defeat them. Unable to fully destroy the Sushu, Shinu divided their power into 4 parts, sealing each into a box entrusted to 4 vassal families for safekeeping. The Weller family, to which Conrart belonged, was one of these families. A century ago, Big Shimaron's ancestors targeted the forbidden boxes and sent troops to invade the Weller family's territory. To prevent the key from being seized, the Weller patriarch severed his own right arm to teleport the key away. Refusing to relent, Big Shimaron's ancestors took the surviving infant heir and raised him in captivity, waiting for a child who could become the key to emerge. Meanwhile, Big Shimaron received intelligence about a new box appearing in the eastern small nation of Franzia and immediately dispatched Conrart with troops. Upon learning this, Gwendol began mobilizing forces. Yuri adamantly insisted on joining, determined not to let the boxes fall into the hands of ambitious individuals. After discussion, it was decided that Anacina and Greta would remain behind, while the rest set out for the east. Franzia, however, was an isolated nation with minimal external communication. Fortunately, Cavalcade maintained ties with Franzia, allowing Yuri's group to utilize their connections for entry. Hiscliffe, who was tasked with receiving them, proposed an alliance between Shin Makoku and smaller nations, including Cavalcade, to resist Big Shimaron's tyrannical methods. Though Yuri worried human nations would struggle to accept Mizoku, Hiscliffe assured him it would not be an issue, as Yuri's heroic deeds in aiding the impoverished had already spread widely among human nations. Following Hiscliffe's guidance, Yuri met with the King of Cavalcade and successfully secured their assistance in helping Mizoku infiltrate Franzia. Afterward, The group split into two teams. Yuri, Gunter, and others headed east, while Gwendol and Cecily stayed behind to advance alliance, building efforts. Meanwhile, Conrad's group arrived in Franja first, but King Pierre refused to meet them under the pretext of illness. Conrad instructed the attendants to relay a message that the king must receive them next time. Days later, Yuri's group reached Franzia. Yosak, having arrived earlier, gathered critical intel. King Pierre of Franzia was a coward who had never aligned with any faction. This necessitated an alternative plan to enter the palace. However, resolving the Conrad issue took priority. Yosak sent him a letter, arranging a private meeting. Though Gunter hid his feelings in front of Yuri, he harbored deep resentment over Conrad's betrayal and intended to eliminate the traitor. Both confided only in Wolfram, fearing Yuri's interference. Under Gunter's relentless pressure, Conrad grew increasingly flustered but avoided lethal confrontation, eventually escaping. Meanwhile, Wolfram hesitated before informing Yuri of Conrad's presence. Yuri immediately rushed out, locking eyes with the fleeing Conrad across the river but ultimately watching him depart. The next day, the group disguised themselves as merchants to approach the palace, only to have their identities exposed by a woman named Lila. However, out of deference to Yuri's status as Demon King, they could not be expelled outright. King Pierre and Lila initially denied possessing the forbidden box, but Pierre recalled an old chest in the underground vault that might match their search. Guided to the vault, they learned the caretaker had sold the dirty box to a cafeteria worker. With Lila's help, they began tracing its whereabouts. Despite the palace's small size, the box had changed hands repeatedly before vanishing entirely. Lila urged them to sightsee while she investigated, but Yosak grew suspicious and tried to accompany her only for Murata to signal against interference. Meanwhile, Pierre leaked the Demon King's whereabouts to Big Shimmeron in hopes of preventing an invasion. However, Big Shimmeron betrayed their agreement and immediately deployed troops to the border. After resting overnight, Lila brought news of a breakthrough in locating the box and led them to ruins where mages once performed rituals. Without suspicion, Yuri entered first only to trigger Big Shimmeron's trap. Gunter, realizing Lila's treachery, sought to kill her but was stopped by Murata. Yuri, oblivious to the betrayal, urged Lila to leave quickly, stirring a flicker of guilt within her. Conrad arrived, and deduced Franzia aimed to annihilate both Shin Makoku and Big Shimmeron. He implored Lila to reconsider, emphasizing Yuri's pacifist nature as a unique demon king. Yet Lila, unwilling to gamble her nation's safety on his character, activated the destruction mechanism. As the ruins collapsed, Yuri unleashed his magic to shield everyone, even Big Shimmeron's soldiers, from harm. Afterward, Yuri neither confronted Lila nor blamed her, instead expressing relief at her survival. This dissolved Lila's final reservations, and she resolved to entrust the forbidden box to Yuri.